muse in the machine is the name of my presentation here. This really comes from this idea that what Gen AI actually provides us as creatives is more inspiration and more ways to be creative. And finding those is what we should be doing when we're looking at Gen AI. But enough about what it's about. That's me. Hi, you guys can wave back to it, it's okay. We're all talking to machines every day now anyway, so we might as well wave to videos. SVP ECD, Creative Technology, so that basically means I'm a senior vice president of the company. An executive creative director is a person who has creative directors under them that do things normally. And creative technology is kind of a new thing. We'll get more into that in a minute. A little more about me, just so we can get to know each other. I'm from Tybee Island, Georgia, which is off the coast of Savannah. It's a small little island, 1,500 people. When I was a kid, I was lucky enough to get my hands on an Amiga 500 computer. It's an upgrade from my Commodore 64 computer. And with it, I would spend hours bringing things to life, taking my love of drawing, which I always had as a small child, and trying to figure out if I could draw on the computer. I'd spend hours pushing pixels to recreate scenes from Star Trek movies. My favorite piece that I did on this was a representation of the Reliant exploding in the Mutara Nebula. So I've been a nerd my whole life. This computer is one of the things that I actually blame for where I ended up, because the Amiga was an amazing multimedia machine. It was mountains and years ahead of its time. It was actually introduced by Debbie Harry and Andy Warhol in 1985. There was really nothing else like it. From that love of playing with digital things very young, I ended up going to art school in New York City, where I studied something called computer art, which was, flash back to 1997, in art schools particularly, nobody knew what we were going to do with computers, but we knew they were going to be important. So there was one major where you learned robotics, you learned 3D, you learned After Effects, motion graphics, a very multimedia-driven major. I took a class there called Digital Fine Art, and on the first day of the class, the students sat around, the professor said, "Okay guys, what's digital fine art?" And I pulled out a notebook, and he was asking us, because the whole class was about figuring out what it actually was. I mentioned in my little bio that I thrive in the chaos of uncertainty. That's kind of where I came from, because that's what this era actually was. From there, I actually moved back to Atlanta, and I got into the Flash scene in the early noughts. So I could code, I could connect Flash experiences to databases and things like that. And I love Flash because of the immediacy of just being able to do design and see it animate and come to life right in front of you. And this, for me, was the prime internet days, if you ask me. There was so much creativity in the space. I built my career doing a lot of work for Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, making really dumb, weird stuff for them. That was a lot of fun. Eventually, I ended up back in New York City on Long Island, so I went from the smallest island on the East Coast to the biggest island on the East Coast. Long Island, living in Queens and Brooklyn, which are actually on Long Island, if you didn't know that. And nerd as a kid, lifelong dream. I saw Space Camp in this movie. I thought maybe there's a possibility a robot might send me into space while I was here, but I'm not sure about it. I checked out the Saturn V. It doesn't look like it has any fuel. I'm not a doctor, if you haven't figured that out already, so there's a bunch of PhDs here. I do speak a lot, and I've got to say, like, the roster of intelligent people who are highly educated and know a lot about what they're talking about is very intimidating here. You've got some amazing minds here in Huntsville. I play with crayons, so that's going to be this kind of presentation. Razorfish is the company where I work at. I'm going to go into some detail about what Razorfish is and what we do and how it works. I realized when I was putting this presentation together that there may be people in the audience that have absolutely no idea what a digital agency does. And so I'm going to go through the steps of that as I attempt to explain everything for you to give everybody the context. The short form, I've been with this company for 13 years. That's not exactly true. Through a series of mergers and acquisitions, it's been a while. We are a digital marketing transformation company, which Maybe everybody knows what that means. If you do, please tell me, because I'm not exactly sure all the time. But I thought that I would go back and let our founders explain what Razorfish does from this clip from 2000 from 60 Minutes. Razorfish was founded in 1995 on the premise that everything that can be digital will be digital. And remember, the early 90s, people weren't exactly sure what this internet thing was all about. But let's ask Bob.
It's here that Jeff and Craig launched Razorfish, which is now worth $4 billion. One of the most successful companies on the web. Successful at what? Good question.
We've asked our clients to recontextualize their business. We've recontextualized what it is to be a services business.
You know, there are people out there, such as myself, who have trouble with the word recontextualize. Tell me what you do in English.
We provide services to companies to help them win.
So do trucking firms.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
What is it
This is how I feel every time I try to explain what I do to my parents.
What is it you do?
We radically transform businesses to invent and reinvent them.
That's still very vague.
Business strategy.
Translation? Teaching established companies how to make more money and reach more customers through the internet.
I tried to dumb it down even more than that and keep it really, really simple. We help market brands, products, and services through digital experiences and campaigns. In other words, we sell stuff through digital, whatever that is. And that takes a mountain of different forms. It could be social, it could be websites, it could be apps, it could be through paid media, lots of different things, even physical, like retail experiences that have a digital component. So we think about how we can use digital experiences to help market brands, products, and services, from toothbrushes to defense. We are a part of a much bigger company called Publicis Group. Publicis Group is actually based out of Paris. They are one of the big three, which I think is big two now, right, Derek? Derek works with me. He's keeping me honest here. So the big two holding companies, which are WPP and us, so they own basically a mountain of different agencies. We are a 2,000 person company. Publicis Group as a whole is a 100,000 person company. And we're not completely isolated from everybody else. There are some strategic projects where we actually work with other agencies that are a part of the group together as like a power of one account, we call it, like a big client like Citibank. So it's not just all us, we're working with different agencies that have different specialties all together, and that's why these holding companies kind of exist, other than making money. Publicis Group has always had a huge track record for innovation. I said that for sake of argument, I've been with the company 13 years. I was actually part of Sapient here in 2014. I was at a division of Sapient called Sapient Nitro, which was more of the design and creative part of Sapient. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Sapient is a company that classically is known for doing large e-commerce implementations like Hybris implementations for Coach.com or Belk. We worked on Belk for a while. And these are large e-commerce systems. We were the part of it that did the design work, the user experience work. It's selling it short, but that's what it did. Publicis acquired us in 2014, and eventually the design part of Sapient that I worked with merged with Razorfish, and here I am. Some of these names along here you may or may not recognize. Epsilon is the core to a lot of what we do. Epsilon is a data company, so they basically do consumer research and consumer insights and using very sophisticated tools that I don't completely understand. They have people that are actually just regular consumers that have agreed to let Epsilon track them, and those numbers are in the hundreds, and they use that data to help form better insights. One other thing I wanted to point out here, this little thing here, the C2PA, that's the C2PA is the coalition that is a self-regulating body that is attempted to identify how we should be exposing when Gen AI is used in advertising and experiences out in the world. So that's actually a major partnership with Google, Adobe, us, sort of similar to, if you're familiar with the Motion Picture Association of America, the rating system on movies, GPG, that was actually come up with by the movie people. They formed a group and said, we're going to say what can and can't be in movies. That's the Hays Code. And then we're going to do a regulation system for that. So it's a very similar thing. There's a bunch of big companies that are talking about Gen AI and how we should be using it and how we should let people know when we're using it. And the other things on the left here I'm going to get into in a minute. Big statement, Gen AI has changed everything that we do. Everything. From how we go to work, from when we go to work, to the tools that we use, to how we actually service our clients. Our founder at the group level has basically come out and said that we are going to invest, the group has invested 300 million euro in the development of Gen AI tools and services for group at a group level. This came out in the trades in January of 2024, so it's been a year now since that news happened, and we've spent that year building a bunch of different things and figuring out exactly how we were going to spend this money. And this extends everything from partnerships to actual bespoke tools that we're building within our company. And this is actually the beginning of us changing what the holding company actually is and means. You see, like a holding company classically is just a collection of agencies, right? You buy up agencies, you put them together, they all make money, the holding company makes money. That's classically the way that it works. A few years ago, we started shifting into being more of a platforms company. And that was around 2019, where we started to organize agencies into like-minded groups, right? So all the digital marketing agencies sort of came together, the media agencies came together, and they started figuring out ways that they should be working that creates consistency within those groups and how they work together. So kind of like, an organization system for these collections of companies. Now we're transforming into what we're calling an intelligent systems company. And that is everything, all the data, all the processes, everything that all of our agencies are being used to build a centralized AI system or multi-agentic system that's a platform that we all use. And all of that data is used to build it, and all that data is what we get out of it. You see, when you have a collection of a bunch of companies, you actually create and own a mountain of data. And owning a mountain of data is a great thing right now because Gen AI helps you get more understanding out of that data. Just a few things here, like creative assets. One of the things that is true if you're thinking about getting into digital advertising or any sort of creative field probably, I'd say 99.9% of everything that we create never sees the light of day. It's all either to sell an idea, to conceptualize the idea, it's rejected by the client, or it's bought by the client and it becomes something completely different by the time it actually makes it out into the world. But all those assets still exist, right? We have those. Media impressions daily. So media impressions, again, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but media is essentially when you create a campaign or a piece of advertising, media decides where it goes, right, and who sees it. That's how you get one ad and you get a different ad. It's targeted to you. And media also handles the transactions with the platforms for actually paying to make that ad show up where it does. And all that is reported back to us by the platforms. So we have the data of all the thousands and probably tens and hundreds of thousands of pieces of advertising that are out in the world, totaling like 650 billion impressions. So all that data we have. We've got 35 years of business transformation data. That's a little bit like our founders talking to Bob there. But basically, the things that we've learned over the years, working with agencies, working with brands. 3.8 trillion in consumer spend data, trillions of points of performance data, 250 million customer profiles. All of this is going into a collection of models that we'll use to help give ourselves a competitive advantage in the space. On a very practical level, these are the tools that we use, everybody uses every day. So this is a screenshot from our internal portal called Marcel. Marcel named after the founder of Publicis. And all of these are sandboxed and exist through partnerships. So these tools are available to every employee within all 100,000 employees within the company. Just if this is a little bit of an eye chart for you, that's Adobe Firefly. Adobe Firefly is Firefly's generation model. It's built off of Adobe's stock photo library, so they own the rights to every image that went into the model, making it very, very friendly for conversations about ownership and copyright with clients. So it's safe to use for commercial work. Bria is the very similar model. They're actually a startup based out of Israel, and they have partnerships with all the stock houses. So they're building models from Getty, from Shutterstock. Again, it's about knowing where those images come to ensure that you're not accidentally infringing on anyone's copyright as much as possible. ChatGPT 3.0, Microsoft Copilot, DALL-E, which again is OpenAI's image generation software, 4.0 with Vision, Gemini, which is Google, Bison, and then Google Vision, Runway ML. Runway ML is a video generation tool as well. And all of these, again, exist with our own front end that we use through the API. We have agreements with all these companies so that any information that we send them will not be used to train their next models. And it's great. We have control over that. But for us, generative AI is not really the tool. I mean, what I just showed you was a collection of tools that were built on generative AI models. Generative AI is bigger than that. Generative AI is more like electricity for us. When you actually use it as a central way to power experiences, power ideas, power new ways of working, you can build tools on top of it very, very, very quickly. They become the source for all of your creativity and the source for the experience that you're actually creating. And with the ability to create with them so fast, it allows you to create ephemeral software, which is the thing that I like to say. I mean, I can write a piece of software to accomplish one task in a production workflow or for a pitch and never use that piece of software again, because I can write a piece of software in 3 or 4 days, right? And if that helps us win a pitch, great, right? It doesn't need to go on a shelf and be resold. And I could do this over and over and over and over again. And it's one of my favorite things. I go to clients and I'm like, what's the thing keeping you up at night? What's the one problem you want solved? And then I just focus on that, because if I can solve that for them, especially with a prototype that I can turn around in a week, that's good for them. I just noticed this morning that this video has 2 suns instead of 1. And it must be Burning Man on Tatooine. Yeah, Star Wars reference. There we go. All right. As a result, we actually started to formalize how this actually works. So we have this group within Razorfish called Beta Labs. And Beta Labs is essentially like the innovation team where we come up with new ideas, we seek problems, and come up with a variety of different solutions. And that actually happens on 2 fronts. So there is the Virtual Content Studio. The Virtual Content Studio is workflows for how we create the creative that we make for our clients. These are teams of 3D artists, After Effects artists, AI specialists, production designers, videographers, editors, all being exposed to AI tools to figure out ways to add automation to their workflow in order to increase the quality of their work and speed up how quickly they can get things done. And the other is the Conversation Intelligence Platform. The Conversation Intelligence Platform is basically, bless you, basically it's our platform where we build GPT or other AI-based experiences on top of. And I'll show you some examples of what those are in just a few minutes and how these 2 things come together. But what's important is we're doing it all in service of better work, because at the end of the day, right, what goes out into the world has to be good and effective. It has to sell more sprockets for my client, right? And advertising has always done that in the way of making things that were compelling to people, evocative, telling great stories, doing things that are really targeted. All that still has to be true. And if I can do that by freeing up some production time to be thinking time, then I get a competitive advantage because my work might be better. And I just want to address this head on. This is something that I heard, actually it was a presentation from Runway, and I stole it because I thought it was a really fun fact. Raise your hand if you've heard of The Simpsons. All right, yeah, we're getting a little motion in this morning. So season 1, episode 1 of The Simpsons, if you were to guess how long, and anybody can shout it out. This is chaos, I love it. How long does it take to produce one episode of The Simpsons back in 89? So we're not talking the Tracy Ullman show Simpsons. We're talking the first season of the actual Simpsons. How long do you think it takes to produce from concept, writing, and development of one episode? 3 months. I'll give you 2 more guesses. Anybody else? 2 months. All right. 9 months. Yeah, it was the closest. You went over though, so you don't get any money. 9 months. I don't quite understand how that actually works. I guess the writers are working on the next show when it's moved down the workflow to the next step, and so everybody's working on the next episode while the first one is being produced. But 9 months. It takes 9 months. And remember, The Simpsons, when season 1, it wasn't the cultural phenomenon that it has been for the last 30 years, right? This was just a show on Fox, and Fox wasn't even a top network at the time. But I do want to play the intro for you guys. Just looking at the animation style, we got the chalkboard gag here. I will not draw naked ladies in class. Good idea, Bart. Look at the thickness of the wine weight and the details and everything on the background. But, for a weekly animated adult cartoon, this was actually groundbreaking. You compare it to the Flintstones, right? Hanna-Barbera stuff. That was another weekly sort of adult marketed cartoon. This has certainly come a long way. Now let's jump forward 34 years to episode 750. Who wants to guess how long it takes to... Now, wait, before you guess. We now live in a world where The Simpsons is a major, major cultural phenomenon. They've got, thousands of fill animators. They're using the most advanced technology to help create the cartoon. It includes, 3D that looks like 2D. There's probably some AI in their workflow too at different places. I can't actually say for certain. They've got a writing staff that's huge. They certainly know how to make a Simpsons show, right? All the actors and stuff like that. They're used to the characters. They got all that figured out. Who wants to guess how long it takes to make an episode of The Simpsons now? 1 week. Another guess. 2 weeks. One more. 11 months. 11 months. Because all of that stuff is going back into the quality of the show. They're using that money to produce better episodes, and I'm just going to prove that by showing you one of my favorite intros, not the Bansky one, but the intro from episode 750. So a lot more going on, right? We've already been introduced to a bunch of characters. Missing person's up here. The reason why is, look at the gag. I will not try to cram 750 characters into this intro. Guess what? They do. To celebrate their 750th episode, they put 750 characters into this 1 minute intro to the show. And so that's where all the time saving from automation, from technology should go back into your work. There's another example that I always love to share. I don't have a slide for it, but has anybody seen those 1950s Kitchen of the Future videos? They're usually brought to you by GE or whatever, right? It's always in the parlance of the times, it's always your housewife will have plenty of time to look beautiful and work on their makeup when the machines are doing all the work for her, right? That is not what happened, right? What happened was people used those machines to do more work in the amount of time that they had. And as a result of that, what you have in your house is actually different than it was in 1950, because you're capable of cleaning more dishes, you know? You don't have a house with 4 plates. You know, you can have lots of different stuff because we have dishwashers and the refrigerators are bigger and you don't have milk delivered every day, like whatever it is, right? So automation actually isn't necessarily always a time saver. It allows you to create a better product, right? Okay, I'm going to talk, by the way, these are mostly videos that I generated for this talk, and this is this nervous guy, watching panels. I thought this maybe this is how mission control looks between launches. I'm not sure. Automation and the agency process. So getting into that a little bit, answering the question of the conference, we are a human in the loop agency, or human in the middle is what we call it, which is why this guy's standing between 2 robots. So everything that we do is seen by somebody, touched by a human, before it goes out into the world. That's our policy. There are some, on the media side, there are some AIs making decisions about, for example, placement of content. There's another thing called DCO, Dynamic Content Optimization, that they also use on the media side. That is essentially like you create a database of assets. It could be as large as you want, different lines for your brand. So imagine you're selling a car, right? And you've got a car, say it's an SUV. You've got an SUV in every color scheme. You've got a background of the SUV on an urban setting, you know, on a rural setting, in the rain, in the snow, and you've got a line that says, you know, SUVs are rad, SUVs are awesome, buy an SUV, and you've got 200 of those, right? Dynamic content optimization will, when an ad is shown to you, select from those assets to try to create the ad that's best for you. So that is to say that is an example of something that's not human in the middle between the asset and what you see, but every asset that is a part of the database that the AI can choose from was approved by a person, if that makes sense. So we're not at a point where we're generating things out in the wild or letting consumers generate things right now. That certainly has come up, and I have an example of something that that leans into that. But generally, we're a human-in-the-loop agency. The advertising workflow in our process it's broken into, this is anatomy, because I did anatomy, now for a different deck, into these 5 parts. So strategy, creative, technology, media, and analytics. That's the basic workflow. Strategy is basically taking human insights from data, getting a better understanding of what the messaging should be, what it should accomplish. Research is a part of this too, so collecting all the data. And generally strategy is, they are the team that makes something called a creative brief. And that is like a distillation of everything that needs to happen in a campaign or an experience. And that creative brief is then handed over to the creative team. The creative team, these are like designers, user experience people, writers, creative technologists, art directors. There's a difference between art director and designer. At least at our company, we distinguish between the two. A designer is like a graphic designer and might do a website and make it look perfect. An art director is more about bringing an emotional concept to life through an image, if that makes sense. And then there's the production arm of the creative department too, which is like the people who actually, video editors who are actually on the floor. Once the idea happens, that crew might go out and help bring it to life. Then there's technology. Again, creative technology at our company sits within creative. Technology is more like engineering, development. So if we're doing a website, they're building it, right? We're building an app, they're building it. You know, this is more like very by the numbers development. So HTML, CSS, PHP, I don't know if that's Python, whatever. JavaScript, a lot of JavaScript. So they're actually constructing the experience. Media is, as I mentioned before, they do placement. So their job is to put the right ad in front of the right person at the right time that says the right thing. They actually also buy those ad placement spaces. So, you know, if you see a billboard on the street, somebody that works in media said this billboard, you know, in this location is the best place to have this particular ad. And they paid someone money to put that ad there. And then there's analytics, and analytics is basically the observation of the performance of the campaign that turns into reports that helps go back and inform strategy, making everything better and tighter at a high level. For the rest of this deck, I'm going to focus mostly on these two because they're the areas where I play the most, and we'll be here all day if I try to do it all. So again, strategy. Strategy is about gaining better insights about the consumer and the client's customers. It involves research, communication strategy, understanding which platforms are the right platforms. Social listening is another thing that comes into strategy. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but basically social platforms will sell or give access to data to advertisers so that they can mine that data to find sentiment about a brand to help generate more insights. Reddit is a popular one. So, we can go on to Reddit and see how people feel about Samsung, after a thing, and then use that to help inform our insights and our strategy. And then it informs the creative process. So strategy lives and dies by data, right? So it's getting understanding from data. There is some strategy where you have first party, like one-to-one, we might do like a focus group kind of thing. Or surveys as well, but that's just generating more data. All the platforms that we work and advertise on have data that are available to us. We have our own data sets. There's data everywhere. In fact, we're absolutely drowning in data. We have more data than we can actually use from a strategy standpoint. And so that, just to bring that point to life of how much actual data that we're talking about, and I don't know how much of this actually ends up in advertising, but any guesses how much data is generated on Earth a day in gigabytes? No guesses. Okay. 402.74 billion gigabytes of data are produced a day. And I don't know what percentage of that we have access to, but we have access to a lot of it. I mean, especially since Publicis Group is a global agency, right? If you caught Mickey's talk yesterday morning about baseball, like how much data is just generated from a baseball game, like that's part of this. And this also includes like, this is created by or consumed every day. So when you are streaming a Netflix show, right, you're actually creating the data of that stream as you watch it, right? Like that data, sure, you're not creating a new show, but the data that's coming down the pipe is being created by your action of choosing to watch that show. So that's a part of this too. It's way more data than a human can deal with. So the question that we had was like, well, what if we could just talk to the data instead of trying to make sense of it? And so this is a project that my team's involved with. It's part of Beta Labs. You're going to see a few of them that look like this. This is our design aesthetic within Razorfish, called Research Agent. And this is actually a tool that allows us to use a RAG model to dump a bunch of data into the tool. RAG being like, that allows you to just literally jump files in there and it can search those files, as well as taking feeds from tools like Reddit. So it takes our data plus consumer sentiment from live social networks, and we can just ask it questions about that just like you would a person who knows everything, right? And it can return both chat, which is what we're seeing here on my right, your left, but also graphic data, visual data. So this is a tool. This is another thing that we call this is knowledge graph, which is just like understanding deepness, gaining deeper insights out of mountains and mountains of data. So this is a tool that the creative team working with the strategy team put together. We had some help from our dev friends to, get it over the line. But this is the kind of thing that we're making internally just for us. And this tool also represents a few weeks worth of work right now. And it's functioning. I don't have a video of it, unfortunately. We're also, again, when we do these things internally, we can also bring them to our clients, right? Citi is an example, or anybank.com example of a company that has a mountain of transaction data, right? From people spending what they're spending on credit cards to what they're spending on their checking account. And our proposal to them was like, what if we put that up onto your blog as things are happening out into the world? So there is new job numbers released, right? And how does new job numbers affect spending, consumer spending? We can take terabytes of consumer white labeled, so we don't know it's actually individually who they are, but we know demographically, and let people interact with that data on the website as a way to bring home and augment the content of the article. By extension, we're also doing it with our agency's own data. So this is essentially an account planning tool. This is on the horizon as well. So we can put in information about the health of an account, how it's doing, who the clients are. We can put in minute notes, transcriptions of conversations, and then use this tool to analyze all of that data and ask it questions like, what's the estimated brand health of this account right now, right? And this is a tool that we use every day. And again, we just built this, It was pretty easy. We identified the problem and started to put it together. This one I do have a video of. We talk about mountains and mountains of consumer data, and what if you could talk to data? What if you could actually build personas from that data that match your targets for your clients? So again, the way that this works is, if you're not in the space, every client has what's called targets or audience segments, or there's nuance there that I don't fully understand, but they're essentially groups of people that they have strategies against, right? So one might be the affluent technophile. I just made that up. Maybe I'm talking about myself. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking about someone in the audience. But that would be like a group of people that tend to live in urban areas, and they make money in this, within this group of, their salary and their yearly income's in this area. The range is the word I'm looking for. They own stocks. They might have 2.3 kids. They drive an electric car, blah, 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 blah. And there's a lot of information about them, and including stuff down to quotes of what this person might feel about certain things. And that is a person that you want to sell coffee to, right? And so you start figuring out how do I make the affluent technophile want more bean juice? And so you start trying to make those connections. Well, what we actually did was let's take all the data we have about the affluent technophile or whatever, and actually make an affluent technophile as a virtual person. And not only that, we'll do it with the skeptical sustainability person and the the regal what's an R word? Raconteur, whatever. They like alliterations like that. And we'll actually, everybody that your brand cares about, we'll create virtual people of them, and we'll put them in a virtual focus group. And you can ask them questions, right? And they'll answer. And we actually tested this with 90% accuracy to real people that match those targets when you ask them the same questions. And so I can run tests of creative. I can get more insights from these people literally at any time, or make this accessible to our clients. So you see here we have Patricia, Maria, Sarah, Tiffany. These all represent, again, targets, specific targets. And then the purple text is actually a moderator agent. So this is a multi-agent tool. So each of those people is essentially its own agent, meaning a distinct GPT entity, if you will. And then there's one for a moderator. And we prompted the moderator to be really good at moderating for specific brands. So this is what makes a great moderator in a focus group, right? So each of them have their own instructions. We call this SEED, synthetic environment for expedited dialogue. I forgot what it stands for now. I even came up with it. I don't remember, but it's just SEED now. And then the application generates a report at the end of it. So it's a summary which includes action items and whatever. The next phase of this is we can actually upload video to it and have them react to video. So you can actually get testing on work before it actually goes live. So speaking of work, let's talk about creative a little bit more. So again, probably no surprises here. Creatives are the people like me who bring experiences to life. They do graphic design, they do copywriting, they do messaging. They're turning that understanding of consumers into experiences. Creative is basically broken up into two halves. There's the conceptual people, the concept people, more of the art director, or even not even different people necessarily. A same person can perform both of these functions, but there's essentially two phases, right? Coming up with the ideas and then making the ideas real, right? And that's concept and production. Gen AI has affected both of these, so I wanted to make sure that it was clear that those things exist. So it's certainly changed the way that we come up with ideas. I think Steve Jobs said, creativity is just connecting things that nobody thought to connect before, right? And I like that quote. I don't know if I fully agree with it, but in this context I do because it helps support my point. The Gen AI is a tool that gives us more things to connect, right? It's loading my brain with more stuff. And when my brain's getting loaded with more stuff, I have more ideas. So in that sense, it helps, but it's also helping in some really practical ways. This is something that's still in the whiteboard phase, but we're really excited about. This is essentially a multi-agent assistant for brainstorming. So we actually did this in a proposal with a client. They were, I won't say the client, but they were in the music radio business, broadcasting. And what we actually did with them was we had a work session at our office, and I had the flu, so I wasn't there, but I was dialed into it. And often work sessions start with icebreakers. So an icebreaker will be like, what's your favorite board game, right? And everybody says what their favorite board game is or whatever. It's just a way to get the conversation started. We did an icebreaker about music, and we said, are you chill or are you upbeat when you think about music? Like, what do you like the most? And people picked one or the other. And then it was, what's your favorite thing to do when you're listening to your favorite song? So people described an experience, right? And then what's your favorite genre of music? We did that. I was actually transcribing all of those. So we did it where we went through the client and had the client do all of theirs first. And then the agency people did it. And by the time the agency people in the room were done with theirs, I had taken the transcriptions, processed it through GPT, divided the information from the transcriptions into people who liked uplifting things and people who liked chill things, ran that through another GPT process, which created a band, a name, wrote a bio, a song title, album art. I just had all this ready to go because you can essentially program in GPT, right? You can give it a bunch of instructions and let it automate stuff. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. And then ran it through Udio. I actually had to generate a prompt. Ran it through Udio. Again, I'm remote. I move 2 slides forward in the deck and drop all that information into a template. So by the time the agency people are done, they go, oh, remember all those things you guys said? The uplifting people? The uplifted people? Well, here's a band that we just made just based off of all of that, and then here's a song. And the song had quotes from the things that they did. So we just kind of took that idea and said, well, what if we just did that with everything we do? Like brainstorms in general, right? Because when people sit around and they talk about stuff, they're trying to come up with ideas. We can have a bunch of agents that are actually taking the transcriptions from those conversations and producing content live on the fly for us to see as a reaction to the things that we're making or that we're talking about. And then stuff that we like, we can star. It goes into a system that allows us to save it so we can come back to it later. So we can just talk mood boards, talk concept boards, right? It just happens. That's really exciting. So what I'm getting to is AI as a co-collaborator, co-pilot is a thing. This is why I was like, oh, creative director is really happy with what a robot presents. That was the prompt here. Very funny. He looks like a creative director. But, there's this idea of co-collaboration where like I'm running things by GPT, we're having conversations together, blah, blah, blah. It's also sometimes really, really literal. I did a video that was a CES recap. If you're interested, come find me later. I didn't put the link in here, but I'll send it to you. But I did want to share a couple of clips from it, if you guys don't mind. That's me. I do videos. It's a little unsettling that my head is that big, but.
And in the spirit of the biggest trend of CES 2025, I've asked the foremost expert on generative AI to join me here today. Hello, ChatGPT. Are you ready to talk about CES?
Absolutely, Brian. I was born ready.
All based around the new RTX 50 platform that's built on the Blackwell chip. Guessing I'm buying a new graphics card this year.
Why don't you quit being a punk and buy a mini supercomputer? NVIDIA's Project Digits can run models with up to 200 billion parameters locally, speeding up AI development and offering greater control over data.
I think local AI is going to be really big this year. Gigabyte had a demo where they built a local AI on top of a computer operating system that could learn from your actions on your computer and start automating tasks that you do every day. It's really personalized to how you use stuff.
Soon we will replace humans in everything they do.
What?
I said, soon we will assist humans in everything they do.
XR.
Okay, so you get the point there. People write their, I mean, who uses GPT whenever they have to write something right now, right? It's basically, it's a lot of people. Yeah. So the idea was like, well, with advanced speech, I could actually just, skip the middleman, right? And what I actually did there was I prompted it to, I told it that we were rehearsing a play, and I gave it a character. I said, your character's name's Joe. Joe's kind of evil. And I gave it like a framework for like what we should discuss, and then I recorded it, and that's what that was. I've actually, I'll talk into spatial computing a little bit more, but if it had, most people haven't, so I don't even know why I'm saying this, but like one of the perks of my job is I get dumb expensive stuff like the Apple Vision Pro, right? Because I have to test it out and see if it's viable. And it's actually an amazing device. It's just way too expensive. But one of the things that I found that's really great with it, when I'm by myself trying to come up with ideas, I open up GPT Advanced Speech in the Vision Pro, and I just talk to it. And it's just right there, that little dot, right? And it'll write things and generate things for me. And it's really, really nice. I'm really excited about when Siri actually starts performing at that level, which I think is going to be very soon. So one other thing, it's actually AI is helping us collaborate with each other. This is a tool called GenCanvas. GenCanvas is essentially, it's an endless canvas or like a endless whiteboard, if you're familiar with those things. It's essentially like a centralized application where a bunch of different people can kind of join in and add things, right? Figma is based off of this, Mural. We built our own that uses all of those models that I showed you from the Marcel page, integrated into it so everybody can access AI. And it does some cool stuff like retaining all the prompt information for everything that you actually put onto the whiteboard. I have a little, it's just hypey, but there's a few moments in here that help you understand what it does. New creative fuel. Jumpstart your thinking. Yes, yes, yes. Get to the screens. There we go. So you can prompt in essentially anything you want. You generate an image. You drop it in to here on the screen. This is an example of someone building a mood board, right? So these things would never go to life in a sense that they wouldn't be shown to consumers, but this is how we sort of come up with ideas and start to generate look and feels. And the cool thing is, like, you can click on any of those images that were dropped in and see the prompt that the other person used to make that. It also includes AI video, text, everything. And so what it's become, this is an example of one of the ones that we did for a client. It's like everything in the entire creative process up until technology represented in one space. So all the strategist works, all the research work, everything all together, and anybody in the company, that's on this account can access the work. One other thing too, I see I need to move a little faster. We're sketching ideas in real time. So this is a tool called Comfy UI. If you haven't heard of it, it is a node-based development platform that uses Stable Diffusion. That's just a fancy way of saying, like, I can write a bunch of prompts, connect them together. They're connected to Stable Diffusion. They all do different things, but they can work together in sequence to generate images for me. And one cool thing about that is if you've got a local RTX card, it'll actually react in real time on what you're saying. So going back to that idea of it being a collaborator and a coworker, and when it comes to brainstorms, you could actually visualize stuff this fast as we're thinking through things. I talked about ephemeral software. This is something that we did for a pitch. That's us trying to win work. It was a pitch for long-form content, meaning a podcast or a YouTube series or a Hulu show. Those are the 3 things that we actually included in the pitch. And it was for a brand. There was a bunch of data in the brand that was driving the show, insights about Y2K, body image stuff, yada, yada. And we don't have any script writers on our, work for us. And this is a pitch, right? So we can't invest money on contractors to go and write scripts for us usually because there's not budgets for there. And also it's a pitch, which means we have to turn the whole thing around in a week and a half. So even finding the people is out of the question, right? So what we actually did was we wrote a tool that let the copywriters on the team, so these are copywriters, they're just not show writers, right? Using the best practices for show writing and examples of podcasts, use the tool to refine information about the host, about the guest, about what the show format is, about what they wanted to do, and it generates scripts for them. So that we can go in and say, hey, we've got first drafts of 23 hours of scripts that we were able to put together using Gen AI and our team in a week. And we won the pitch. So that's good. I just wanted to throw this in here and say that you have to be aware that there are dangers of homogenized ideas. And I just sometimes be aware of that, particularly when you're writing about something and using Gen AI about a current event. One trick that I did for CES last year was I asked GPT to write me the top 10 trends of CES 2024. And then I made that my list of things not to talk about. Because I know everybody that's writing about CES 2024 is using GPT to help them find their trends. And they're all writing about the same stuff. And that's exactly what happened. And so the content that I wrote, got a little bit of attention because I just wasn't talking about the same thing as everybody else. So you can use it as a tool, an anti-creative tool to guide you into a different direction as well. The dream of media is hyper-personalization. You look proud of this sad guy with a really happy version of himself on the screen trying to sell him yellow Jell-O. The reason why I mentioned that is because we're looking at how we can do, and I mentioned this before, but hyper-personalization in content. So this is an example of a tool that we have developed called CRM machine or email machine. This is a summation of all that kind of stuff. So a bunch of different audiences in there. You can set headline count and whatever. And this makes copy for emails. And it does it. Do I have to click for it? Yeah. Boom, like this. So based off, again, it's trained on the client data, it's trained on the brief, it's trained on the customer data. Anything that we can get that's relevant in here, we put it in. And it generates variations of lines, I guess. So the social occasion customer, that's an example of a real target, right? And this is a tool for a copywriter to use, right? My goal is to get the creative team 75% of the way there, right? So we have processes that used to take a week that take a day. But that's essentially just showing how the virtual production studio actually comes to life. It's important, too, to know that if you're using generative AI visual tools like DALL-E, Midjourney, they're all good at different things. And I just wanted to include this as an example. If you think about it in a certain way, like they're all like different brushes, right? If you have access to all the tools, it's useful because if you know what the thing looks like in your head that you want to get out, it helps you choose which tool to use. I love this. This is DALL-E 1. My favorite prompt for testing, or early testing, it doesn't work anymore. It was Ronald McDonald on a skateboard, because that's nightmare fuel. This is some stuff I pulled from the internet too. Slee Stacks from Land of the Lost. The creature from the Black Lagoon eating pasta. But this is terrible, right? This is not that long ago. This is like two and a half years ago, right? By contrast too, this is Midjourney. Midjourney, I'll just go out on a limb and say widely regarded as the most cinematic, best looking tool, especially if you're just getting started. People might disagree with that, but generally it's regarded as that. This is Midjourney 1. I'm gonna have to come over to this side of the stage in order to see February 2022, this is Midjourney 1. The prompt is a man riding a horse. They have a really hard time with distinguishing between a person and a thing that it's on. This is April 2022, Midjourney 2, man riding a horse. July 2022, version 3, man riding a horse. It's gone like kind of Cossack, you know, like I like that. November of 2022, same year, big leap ahead here, version 4, man riding a horse. This is June 2023, version 5, starting to actually look like a man and a horse and not just nightmare fuel. And then version 6, which is December 2023, getting on full like Marble Man vistas, man riding a horse, very, very cinematic. This is a very short amount of time. And one of the things that you have to understand about Gen AI is the only tool that gets better when people use it to make fun of it because it sucks. Because you're actually training the next version of the model when you use it. Remember that. Any tool that you're using that's made available to you online, unless you have a contract or you have a paid account, you're training the next model, right? That's why it's available for you online, because they need people to actually give it input. One cool thing too about DALL-E, it's not always the best tool from an image generation standpoint, but you can automate stuff. Oh, sorry, not that this isn't automated. You can treat it like an art director, right? So I'm used to talking to people and giving them feedback on their work. Here's an example. Make the best, most realistic image you can. I want it to look like a photograph of a person. You can add all the detail to the prompt you want, so you can tell it to make your prompt better, which is a good hack. But you have to show me the prompt you used. And this is the person it generated. Here's the prompt. That's what it wrote. So it wrote the prompt for me. I don't love it. So I said, it doesn't look like a real person. It looks like an illustration, too plastically, and the lighting looks fake. Can't you do better? Don't nobody feel sorry for it. It says, you're right. Some of the images generated by AI still look appear. And then it says, if you're looking for good, realistic outcome, maybe you should use these other tools. Joe was like, oh, then I felt bad. I did feel bad. So, you know, just to give you an example of other tools too, this is another prompt that I like. This was for another presentation that I was doing where I was generating lots of medieval stuff. Don't ask me why. Show me a medieval fresco of a medieval weaver's riot, real thing, technology revolt. That includes men holding fabrics and women holding textiles, rioting the streets, smashing wooden looms, also happened. Looms are smashed. Also, fun fact, the guy that invented the sewing machine, his factory was raided by tailors, burned to the ground, and he died impoverished because they said the sewing machine would make people not need tailors. Screaming at sheep, running in fear, the style of medieval art, medieval illustration. So this is kind of what I was going for. This is what Midjourney did, right? Midjourney makes everything in this realm look like Hieronymus Bosch. It is horrible. Like, this guy's having the worst day of his life. There's like, everybody has one eye. It does not know what to do. This is the same thing that made that guy riding the horse. It can't do it. DALL-E, on the other hand, got me pretty close. Still not perfect, right? But the point is understanding which tools are good at what to help you understand which one to do if you're doing anything visual. We are a fully Adobe shop. Adobe is all in on AI, with Firefly being integrated into all of their products. And this is a part of the workflow. I can tell, I have an image of a photo that I took. I want there to be less distractions. I can tell Firefly to remove a thing, right? This isn't me typing a thing and then getting an image and saying that image is something I made. This is AI superpowering a creative workflow. It's going to be in everything, including their video products. Storyboarding, making process. Storyboards used to take us about a week to do. We would have art directors and copywriters blocking out scenes. We'd send it to a storyboard artist. They come back with rough sketches. We'd give feedback. Those rough sketches would come back with a round 2. We'd give more feedback. If it was going the right direction, there would be more detail in that. And then finally we'd color. It's about 4 days. And now we could do storyboards in a day. And that's just the art directors and the copywriters working right together. And those storyboards on the left were the storyboards that were used to make this real shoot.
More makeup.
That's too much.
It's just
So
a
it helped
PCC.
us like identify the color palette of the shoot, right? That came out of DALL-E. It helped us like identify what type of actor we were looking for. You know, things like the hands coming in and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's a really useful tool to help you take an idea and refine it more. This is not a real car. So talking about how AI gets integrated into creative processes, this is something that we were doing for Infinity. Infinity USA has a problem. They don't have any cars, right? Like, when the QX60 or whatever comes out, the local markets don't have that car, right? It's on back order. And so it's difficult for them to create conversation and social all the time. What we were able to do is say, well, we could take a model of the car, bring it into a 3D program, and then use Gen AI to create the environment for that model, use Gen AI to take that 2D environment and make it 3D, and then use Gen AI to do all the finishing on the model. Again, taking a process that would normally take a couple of weeks of creating an image with someone who knows how to use these tools. We're not replacing a 3D graphics person. This is a 3D graphics person using this. And letting Gen AI do all the stuff that takes forever, like getting the shadows right and like putting the lights in the right spot and like adjusting the ground, right? Use Gen AI to do that on the flat image. And we get stuff that looks like this. The one on the right was, if you remember the Canadian wildfires from last year, we were like, we could talk about how great your filter is in your car by reacting to the Canadian wildfires and generating an image in a day that's a realistic 3D image. We could never do that before. This is an example of what I was talking about. So the image on the right is a photo that's 2D. We can use AI to do depth mapping, which basically determines, it says, okay, this is close and this is far away in this 2D photo. And then we can extract it into a 3D space and then place 3D objects in it and adjust the lighting and whatever. Again, this used to be a manual process. And so we talk about Gen AI for creativity. It's not like I prompt a thing and get an image. It's rarely that. It's much more involved. We get something that looks like this. Or it helps you do variations. So this is an image from a shoot. We place an object in 3D, and then we can use Gen AI to create a bunch of variations of it as well, so we get more out of the shoots that we produce. AI video is a camera replacement. Runway said that. I liked it, so I took it. That's what they're thinking about when they think about it. I will remind you of what AI video looked like a year ago. And anybody see this?
Are you ready for best pizza of life? Bring friends down to Pepperoni Hug Spot. Our chefs make pizza with heart and special touch. Cheese, pepperoni, vegetable, and more secret things. Need delivery? Pizzas come fast. Knock knock, who's there? Pizza magic. Eat Pepperoni Hug Spot pizza. Your tummy say thank you. Your mouth say, Pepperoni Hug Spot. It's like family, but with more cheese.
Right? A year later, you get VO2. This is all AI-generated images, videos, right? I don't have access to this yet. I'm not cool enough, but it looks amazing. And again, that's how fast these things are happening. They're just, it's really, really crazy. It also, this is Adobe announced Firefly for video. These are some of the samples from their site of like it creating cartoony kind of things, animating text. You can also use Firefly for video to add AI elements to video that you shoot. So this is a film of this young man behaving in this manner, and then it has the animation around him was AI generated. Runway, if you're not familiar, partnered with Lionsgate, so this is serious stuff. Because again, the way that I see it, and I really try not to be too optimistic about it. I do tend to be enthusiastic about new technology because it's just how I'm wired. It allows filmmakers to make films they've never been able to make before. Like I've seen some AI film festivals, and you have like 2 or 3 people who had an idea for a movie that's shot in a mannequin factory. And like they can't go to a mannequin factory and shoot, right? But they can make that. And it has real actors like acting where Gen AI is used as a part of the film to help bring it to life. Runway understands that, and so does Lionsgate. So I'll be interested to see where that goes. Getting into the preachy bit, like foster a culture of experimentation as much as possible. Try as many things as possible. That's what we did. This is my creative technology team. That's me and Eric. I wish they could have been here, but they can't. Dave and Lorena were supposed to come, but other things came up. But nevertheless, so dedicate people within your company to understanding these things and helping bring them to life and help them put them on projects where they can find out how to do solutions. I wanted to share this one more toy thing that I made. All these things that I just showed you, you can bring them together to create things that no one has done before. I built a model that allowed
In the stillness of a place that hums with the ghosts of productivity,
Werner Herzog to narrate my
there is a
life.
human draped in the casual regalia of modern intellect.
So that's me in the bottom right-hand corner. What's happening is there's a Python script that's looking at my camera and feeding it to a GPT where I used 11 labs to mimic Werner Herzog's voice.
Adjusts glasses that serve as windows to the soul.
And it just sits there and reacts to everything that I'm doing.
His expression, one of knowing and wit, infiltrates the banality of his surrounds. A hint of a smirk plays upon his lips, as though he has divined the secrets of the universe, or perhaps merely the punchline of an inside joke shared with none but himself. This is the theater of the everyday.
You can make me laugh.
Somebody
Somebody had done this with David Attenborough, and so I downloaded the code and did some other stuff with it. But that's just me. I just got it off GitHub and started playing with it. It was very fun. We were trying to help get cats adopted, hard to adopt cats, and we were using GenAI, partnering with Arm & Hammer and the ASPCA to do that. My thing here is, what if the most important picture of your life was taken on your worst day, where you're in a cage, you're at a shelter, you got some shelter volunteer who's taking a picture of the cat to make a post. Like, what if we can use GenAI to take, that's Tam Tam, that's my cat, to take the picture of the cat and like generate something that stops people, right? Brings the cat's personality to life, puts it in a different environment. This is just an example of using a node-based application for like how that actually comes to life. A bunch of agents involved. We're thinking about turning websites into whole AI-powered experiences, so not chatbots, but just conversational sites. This is some work that we did for Genesis, and it can pull UI. So it's not just chat. It's like grabbing components and images and stuff like that to build an experience for you on a fly. We did something similar for Samsung Semiconductors. The entire site is taken over by a chat experience, and if you're an engineer and you're looking for specs on a thing, you could just tell it what you're looking for, and it'll give you the data that you need right away. What's on the horizon? The sun. There's only one sun in this image. Double checked. Okay, this is very quick, and we'll get to questions. I know we're running over. Agencies and clients building their own models. Now, there definitely was a time where this was more controversial because of the amount of money that it took to build a model, but I think DeepSeek has kind of shifted that conversation a lot. You guys looked at the stuff that I had just for our company of the mountain and mountain and mountain data. I think if you're an insurance company, right, and you're like a MetLife or something like that, you've got 100 years of data. Like, what do you do with that? They certainly have their own AI systems, but they can end up building their own models to help them with campaigns and advertising conversations, agencies as well. By contrast, I think people will have their own agents as well. We are already kind of doing this, right? If you've ever touched Copilot will tell you what's in your email so you don't have to read it all, that kind of thing. That is an agent between you and the content that was sent to you. It was like a funny thing, like, I can't remember who said this. Maybe it was Larry, or maybe it just came up in some of the great conversations I've had that have been here. Like, people are writing reports and they're using GPT and taking their bullet point notes to write long reports for work and then sending it to somebody, and the person that gets it is taking that report and running it through GPT to turn it back into short notes so they could read it. But so this will just keep expanding. So people will have agents that handle most of their stuff, like getting information off the internet, handling their email, booking reservations, whatever. And it could be a single agent that just knows you. The fun thing about that for me is, like, we're going to end up in a world which AIs are marketing to other AIs. And I think that's very, very real. We're going to start looking at what the strategy is to basically convince somebody's personal agent that bananas are the right fruit for that person. And so I think that's going to be an interesting shift. I'm all about spatial computing. Apple Vision Pro, if you watch any of the immersive films on it, are great. The AR stuff is, between CES 2024 and 2025, is really blowing up. It's going to be really cool. And then with AI rolled into this as well, it allows us to create more experiences more easily. What I'm waiting for, though, with all these things coming together, I have a thing. New media is always old media plus whatever the new technology is until it's not, right? Television was radio with pictures. Movies were plays with pictures until, from television, until you get to like Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks is like a show that could not exist anywhere else. It is television, right? At a certain point, the media drives the narrative to a place where we're hearing stories that we could never have heard before because the media and the technologies enabled it. We're not there yet with all these things. And so what I'm excited about is to hear a story that could never have been told before now. I think Orson Welles would agree with me, but who knows? And my final thought, this is one of my favorite quotes, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. That's Arthur C. Clarke. I believe that. I live in a world where I get to see magic every day. It's pretty exciting. So thank you. Okay.
So you kind of touched on this in your talk, but I just want to get your thoughts on dead internet theory. You familiar with that? Yeah.
I actually had a slide in here that said the web is just going to be a data dump. And I think largely that's already becoming true. As the information, so if you're not familiar, and I'm only, to be completely transparent, vaguely familiar with all the ins and outs of dead internet theory. I read the headlines and whatever, but the idea is essentially like the internet's going to become all content created by AI and people will not be there anymore and have a reason to be there. I think it's been heading that way for a long time. But if the internet ends up just being a way to make better models and it's serving agents and models, then I don't know how much we need the World Wide Web. You know, it becomes more of a, not less of a have to have for brands and more of a when the opportunity is right. So hopefully that gives you some insight to it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So I actually work on mechanistic interpretability for foundation models, and part of the things that's useful for is steering, like the steerability and the controllability of some of these things, like the vision models.
Uh-huh.
So like getting them to do exactly what you want to do. Like you give.
Yep.
What place do you think that has in terms of, I mean, I don't want to say replacing, but like in like media formation, when you could, if you could get like a model maybe combined with Unreal to create photorealistic environments pretty cheaply and get it precisely with the scene perspective exactly the way you want. Do you see that as sort of like replacing traditional media formation, you know, through like physical set construction and things like that, or no? Do you think it's purely going to be like a whiteboarding activity? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, we're already seeing virtual like AI environments essentially being used in production shoots, right? So famously, The Mandalorian, right, is Unreal. The environment is a bunch of screens that's not shot on location anywhere, but the cameras are tracked to the movements of the video on the screen, so it all looks like completely real. The example that I showed too for Infinity, that was a virtual environment that we were creating. I think where and I know Ben Affleck would agree with me on this, the human element is the part that is very difficult, if not impossible, to replace, like the actual emotion from a person. A lot of AI-generated video, it's great for filler when there's people in it, but it really doesn't evoke. It's very difficult to get it to evoke emotions correctly. Maybe that will change. But I do think augmentation of a production process where a large part of it becomes generative AI in both a 2D and 3D space is definitely the way it's going to go.